In this video, Gwen Southgate reads passages about Britain's child evacuees during World War II from her memoir, Street Chronicles.
November 1940. I am now 11 and am still an evacuee, but have just been transferred to a new secondary school about 200 miles away. The rice pudding incident, pages 186 to 188. In the fullness of time, I got the school routine sorted out and was beginning to feel comfortable in this new life, both at school and at home with the Phipps, my new parents, when, unfortunately, the new scene was disrupted by an unfortunate incident. It involved, of all things, a rice pudding. On the fateful day, Mrs. Phipp was out when I got home, so I did my homework, feeling quite virtuous for my diligence, and then, suddenly, I felt ravenously hungry, as only a rapidly growing 11-year-old can. I poked my nose into the pantry to see if I could find an apple. Mrs. Phipp often gave us one after school, so I didn't think she'd mind. But my eye fell on a dish of leftover rice pudding. I love rice pudding, especially cold, and the temptation was too great. Just one spoonful, I thought. So I scooped up a spoonful, then guiltily washed the spoon and put it away to remove all traces of my crime. But to my dismay, evidence of the missing spoonful remained in the shape of a dent in the pudding. I hadn't realized this would happen, and I could think of no way to undo that dent. So I closed the pantry door and hoped that no one would notice. I hoped in vain. When Mrs. Phipp went to fetch the pudding from the pantry, there came a shriek, "Who's been eating my pudding?" It was like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, Belinda giggled in bed that night. I could hardly keep a straight face. Belinda was my fellow student at my secondary school, a fellow evacuee. We both lived with the Phipps. However, I was too guilt-ridden to see the funny side of this scene, and it was certainly no laughing matter as far as Mrs. Phipp was concerned. When I admitted to being the culprit, my confession seemed to simply whip her into a greater frenzy. She kept on and on about how could I be so deceitful, sneaking around the house like a thief as soon as her back was turned. She'd never be able to trust me again. She was a genuinely devout Christian lady, and it seemed that I had somehow deeply wounded her, right to her spiritual core. I was baffled as to how a spoonful of rice pudding could wreak so much damage. I racked my brains for a way to put things right, but in the end there was no need. On Sunday morning, a few days later, Mr. Phipp quietly told me to pack my suitcase because he was taking me to a new billet. "You're going to some friends of ours, the Sharps. They live just round the corner, so you'll still be near your brothers." As we walked to the Sharps' house, I longed to tell Mr. Phipp how sorry I was to have upset Mrs. Phipp. I badly needed to hear this potato-faced man say something like, "Yes, I know you are, my dear." But shame for what I had done, and fear that his reply might not be what I wanted to hear, kept me tongue-tied and mute, and we walked along in silence, parting with no more than an embarrassed, "Well, goodbye then." When I saw Belinda in school the next day, she said, "Mrs. Phipp's still on about that stupid rice pudding. I can't stand it anymore, so I've written to my mum and dad to come and take me home." which they did. This added enormously to my guilt, for I now worried that because of me, Belinda was back in London and might die in an air raid, all on account of a spoonful of rice pudding.